Love, language, and the magic of words. Get comfortable, my dear listeners, because this is a tale of Jake and Emily, two young dreamers whose love story was written in many languages. Chapter 1. A Meeting of Words. In the bustling streets of New York, where dreams are big and people are always in a hurry, Jake found his peace in a small coffee shop on Fifth Avenue. He loved this place. The smell of fresh coffee, the quiet hum of conversations, and the endless shelves of books in the corner. Jake was a writer, always lost in stories, finding beauty in the way words could express emotions, paint pictures, and create worlds. Emily, on the other hand, was a traveler. She had seen the sunrise over the pyramids of Egypt, walked through the busy markets of Tokyo, and danced under the stars in Spain. But what fascinated her the most was language, the way it connected people, the way each word carried a history, a feeling, a piece of someone's heart. One rainy afternoon, their paths crossed. Emily sat at her usual table, a cup of tea steaming beside her as she flipped through a book titled The Art of Learning Languages. Jake, curious as always, leaned over and said, "You love languages?" Emily looked up, surprised. "Yes, I think every language is a new world to explore." Jake smiled. "Then I guess you're an explorer of words?" And just like that, a conversation started and never really ended. Chapter 2. A Love Written in Many Languages. As days passed, their connection grew deeper. They met at the coffee shop every evening, talking about books, travels, and dreams. Jake was fascinated by the way Emily switched between languages effortlessly, how she could say hello in over 10 different ways, and how she believed that every new language added a new layer to her soul. One evening, as they walked under the city lights, Emily sighed and said, "I wish I could learn more languages, but it's so hard." Jake laughed. "Emily, love is like learning a language. You start with simple words, practice every day, and soon it becomes natural." Emily tilted her head. "Are you saying I should fall in love with English?" Jake smirked. "I'm saying, maybe you already have." Chapter 3. The Distance Test. Just when everything felt perfect, life did what it always does. It changed. Emily received an opportunity to work in Paris for 6 months. She was excited, but a small part of her didn't want to leave Jake behind. "I don't want to forget our conversations," she whispered one night. Jake thought for a moment, then handed her a small notebook. "Every day, write one new word. One in English, one in French," he said. Emily laughed. "And when I come back?" Jake smiled. "We'll write our story together." With that promise, she left for Paris. Chapter 4. The Power of Words. For 6 months, Emily followed their little tradition. She wrote home, realizing that home isn't a place, it's a feeling. She wrote longing, understanding that missing someone doesn't need translation. She wrote serendipity, a word that reminded her that sometimes the best things happen unexpectedly. Back in New York, Jake waited, counting the days, holding on to the words they had shared. Chapter 5. A Love That Speaks Every Language. When Emily finally returned, she didn't go home. She ran straight to the coffee shop where it all began. Jake was there, exactly where she had left him, reading a book as always. She placed the notebook in front of him. 100 words, she said. Jake flipped through the pages, his smile growing. "You really did it." Emily nodded. "And do you know the most important word?" Jake looked at her curious. She leaned in, held his hand, and whispered, "Us." And at that moment, they both knew some words don't need translation. Lesson from Professor Cucumber. Learning a new language is like falling in love. It starts with curiosity. It takes patience. And before you know it, it becomes part of who you are. So, my dear listeners, never stop learning, never stop exploring, and remember, words have the power to bring people together. And as I always say, a cucumber never forgets a word. It just keeps growing. Until next time, this is Ali Podcast, where words come to life.